Hello and welcome to this episode of the IT Journeys and Convos podcast. My guest today is Tobi Odunowo. Tobi Odunowo is a manager in the People Advisory Services practice of Ernst & Young. He has over 18 years of experience working on various people-related functions, including learning design, organizational development, performance management, amongst several others. Over his career, Tobi has worked on several human resource transformation projects. His experience cuts across various industries, including energy, transportation, telecommunications, and non-governmental organizations. Today, we'll be discussing a wide range of topics, including how Tobi has been able to leverage his skills in Power BI to become an expert in HR data analysis. We'll also be talking about how his certification in product ownership and his knowledge of business analysis has helped him grow in his HR career. Join us today as we talk to Tobi Odunowo. Right, so Tobi, you're welcome. Thank you
Thank you.
for making thank you for making time out to join the podcast today. So Tobi, I want to start off this with just a little introduction of you. I know I've read out a background about you, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your career progression and also um, how you've been able to uh, apply IT skills into or how IT skills come into your non-IT career.
Yeah, thank you so much, Olumide. You've read out, I'll say, a brief intro of my career, or what I've done, but I'll quickly maybe just talk about, what the journey has been like. So I started out my career, um, I'll say, as an HR person in terms of work, but my education was entirely different from that. My first degree was in agriculture. And just about the time when I was wrapping up my bachelor's degree, um, I joined an organization called ISEC. So ISEC is a global organization that is very big on looking for ways to change the world for the better. And one big activity that you find in ISEC is student exchange, including in addition to the conferences and leadership opportunities that exist. So ISEC was where I started, to build an HR career, just starting out as a recent graduate and leading the Nigerian chapter of ISEC in terms of what we called people development. So I'll say that is where I started getting introduced to technology because I remember like in ISEC, I would build like HTML based newsletters, and send it out to the network, very, very, very basic things at that time. But it was my very first, I'll say, introduction to a very little bit of coding. I continued my HR career through ISEC. I went on exchange programs. My first one was to Ghana, where I worked with a consulting firm. It was basically just doing recruitment consulting and organization development for clients and also for the consulting firm itself. So did things around balanced scorecard, trying to look at the future of the organization and seeing ways in which we could intentionally plan, to achieve the vision. And then after that, I worked with an organization that also wanted to do something around um, like setting up a recruitment firm. It was an educational consulting company, and we even at that we're also looking at ways in which we could do things, in a more automated way. So how can technology help? I'll say when I started really getting into using technology as a non-tech professional was when I was working with Total E&P, which is one of the world's largest oil and gas companies. And I was looking for the future of HR. So, what's the future of human resources and started getting into, what HR analytics is. So I was really excited about HR analytics. I actually realized that as HR, we sit on a lot of data. At this time, I was only working as a training coordinator. So my day-to-day activities only had to do with reporting on training, scheduling training for people. But even at that, I still had a lot of data. And I remember my boss, reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, Toby, I want you to do some predictive analytics." And at this time, I could only use Excel. So anyway, I did a bit of what I could, looking at indices. I remember also, looking at our training budget and allocation of training budget, and how I had to work with a colleague of mine to come up with certain indices, certain measurables, and based on that, we allocated points to the population in each department. And we had a logical way of sharing the budgets, such that if you went to a leader and he said, "Oh, why does this person have more than I do?" You can use a logical, analytical way to explain how you arrived at that. So anyway, so that was where it started until, my next role, I found myself within the HR information systems department. Not only were we looking at moving from transitioning from a current HR solution to another HR solution, there was also the data conversion that was involved. Um, and then I was also entirely in charge of performance management, which, as many people we know, it is one of the most contentious aspects of HR, because it directly affects not only employees' performance rating, but the bonus that they get after. So I remember I'll go for road shows where I will tell people about, "Oh, this is a process, this is what's changing." But people always wanted to, point out the fact that it's not an objective process, which I don't disagree that most times it's not an objective process. But one of the things I'll say helped me very much was my ability to present data. So about this time, I learned how to use Power BI, which I'll get into more details of how that has, shaped my career ever since. But I was able to look at 10-year historical data. And when I stood in front of the room and spoke with people and talk about a unionized organization where union members are there to, as much as possible, if they can, just peel your skin off. Um, I realized that as I started to speak to facts that I got from data, they had a lot of respect for me. It actually made me win most of the arguments. So I'll say, as a non-IT person, I have seen the power of, just even getting the very basics of information technology, and maybe more specifically data analytics, and how that can help to build insights, within the organization.
What specific IT skills would you say you would find most valuable within your current role, right? And how do those skills contribute to your success?
So I mean, I know I've touched on it a little bit, but data analytics skills will be my number one. There are a few
Yeah.
others, but data analytics will be my number one. In my current role as well, I work on IT transformation projects that's got to do with people. So in terms of, I'm not in the technical part, so I won't be like involved in systems integration. I might not be involved in, looking at process integration, but I'm always in my role involved in anything that's got to do with change management, which could be training, which could also be change readiness. And whenever you're implementing, new solutions for large organizations, you are dealing with a lot of people data. Now, one of the things I have found out is it's difficult to find people within, my profession, my non-IT profession, who have spent time to develop data analytics skills. And because, you're talking about technology solutions, technology solutions are not based on paper. Technology solutions are their tech solutions, right? So their systems, their software, and there is no way you would not need to analyze data, and not just a few amount of data. I'm talking about large amount of data. Imagine doing transformation projects for clients that have thousands of employees. Even if all you have to do is, something as simple as what training um, courses do people need, as they move from using one software to a new software that they are not familiar with, you're dealing with a lot of data. So I have seen my ability to dissect data, to pull insights from data, to report data to leadership in a way that's consumable, in a way that helps them to draw insights from it in making decisions, current decisions, future decisions. How do we go in tracking progress as well? That has made me to stand out. So that would be my number one, when it comes to this. And this applies to many other non-IT professions as well. The more we start to use systems, computers, software for housing our information, the more data we have. And I know everyone would resonate with the very common saying that data is the new oil, right? So um, data itself is useless until it is actually fully analyzed, dissected, and brought into a consumable fashion. Although in its resting position, let me put it that way, it's of no use to anyone.
Walk us through a specific example of maybe a project or a task where you've integrated technology or automation into your role to improve efficiency and effectiveness. I know you just spoke about like employee data and all of that, but like just paint a scenario of a project you worked on and something you've done, and just so that my viewers can gain some more insights from this little case study.
Yeah, I'll give an example of my previous employment where working with an oil and gas company, um, a multinational oil and gas company. And in the local office, like the national office, we did have an HR solution that we had used for many years. And it got to a time where that was going to be retired, and we were going to have to implement what the global office started to deploy in the different countries where the organization existed. Now, this is going to be a bit of a challenging task because number one, the data architecture and the data nomenclature were not the same. So I was not one of the technical people. I was not one of the people coding, but I was one of the people that understood the processes. So I understood our training processes. I understood our performance management processes. I also understood our organization design processes. And each of those processes has got, there's an impact on those processes as we're moving into another tool. So the way we did our training assignments was going to change. The way we did our training needs identification was going to change. The way we did our training planning was going to change. The way people interacted with the tool was going to change because this was going to be an entirely new tool. So when managers are recommending training for their employees as performance management is going on, they are using a different tool. Now, when I talked about the data nomenclature, so you probably one of the systems that an alphanumeric, when it comes to what's the training code, it's ABCs versus numbers put together. The new tool was going to have just numbers alone, so there had to be data conversion as well. And I'm not a tech person, so I'm just doing all
Mhm.
of this in Excel, but you have to be able to translate the current data you have to the new data, because that's the only way you can retain the information that you had. So you're looking at people's training history backdating to 20, 30 years that you don't want to lose. And that training history has to be carried over into the new system or carried into a data warehouse that people can still access. So whilst all the software developers were doing their own coding, and building of data warehouse and all of those things, and I was just, learning all those terminologies, I still had to help. I still had to have enough Excel skills to be able to do the data conversion, to be able to say, well, this is the title of this course. This is the old um, course code, but this is the new code. And in doing that, it's not just having basic Excel skills that will make you successful in that. I had to understand, how to use some Excel formulas, VLOOKUPs, and all of those things. And the impact of that was, whenever change happens, the success of your change is the acceptability of the change by the end user. So if you move to a new system and no one uses that system, then your entire investment in having a new system has failed, right? If people find alternative ways because you've moved them to a new system and the old system has been decommissioned, and then it has failed. But when we started to see people, we help them through a process of understanding what has changed. Of course, the resistance to change will always happen. So definitely you will hear, why are we changing this? So the old system is better than this new one. Even this one is still complicated. I don't even know what to do. I can't find the information I used to be able to find. I don't understand this new terminology that you have here. So all of those things, helping people through the process of transitioning and being able to answer their questions, and making sure that the way we converted that data wasn't too abstract for people. They could still trace, the past and and connect it to the present. Those are the things that made it successful. So I know I've actually just summarized this, but it was a lot more than what I've said. Yeah, and just having an appreciation of technology made a huge difference.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Toby, those are like, that's like an amazing packed response that right there. There's some really interesting nuggets which I picked out from it. You said something, you said the success of a change is reflected in the adaptability of users to that change, right? Toby, I don't know where you got that from, but that's a quotable quote right there, right? And I'm gonna frame it, put it in a book someday.
That's okay.
So I want to ask, what challenges do you face in trying to marry your your IT skills into your non-IT role? What challenges do you face and how do you bridge that gap between IT and non-IT?
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, the first thing that I've told myself is IT technology generally is a solution to many areas of the business.
Yeah.
I have a strong understanding of my area of business. I have a strong understanding of HR. But the challenge I face every day, which uh, is also an opportunity, is how does technology enable HR? That's a question I've got to ask every day. Now, HR itself is very broad, and what I do every day, it's not the same. So, moving from industry into consulting has even made it, more dramatic in a way, because when you get into consulting, you find yourself doing things that you probably haven't done before the way you're doing it, but your skill set actually does apply. So I found myself, like in recent times, working for clients and doing things I've never really done, that way. I have a knowledge of it, but I haven't done it that way. There is a very huge opportunity to be able to identify how technology can enable what you're doing. Now, technology does a lot for us. Technology helps us to save time. Technology helps us to be more accurate, right, in what we are trying to get. Technology helps us to be able to test and to validate that what we have is correct, or we're on the correct path, we're doing the right thing. So many things that technology will enable within the HR space. I'll say as I get to identify these opportunities, and sometimes not a lot of HR people have embraced the necessity of building their technological skills. And I don't blame people because it appears it's very complicated, it's very complex, and people just run away from it. And some people will tell you when it comes to like data analytics, oh, I never liked math in school. I am a very good example of someone who was never good at math. But one thing I like to do is I like to find solutions to problems. And I also tell people that I am pretty lazy, so I like to find the quickest way to get things done, which technology helps you do that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it helps you find the quickest way to get things done. And you get it done, I'll just throw this in there. I many times I run I build dashboards, for my projects, and then that is actually made accessible to leaders. And once in a while, I see people just running and like emailing and say, "Oh, the data is not correct." And when they say that, I know that data does not lie. So I know most of the time is something wrong at their end. Okay, I've made an update, you have not refreshed, and then you're looking at it and you're saying the data is not correct. So I say, well, just refresh the dashboard and you're going to see the correct information. And they do it and like, oh, sorry, my bad. That was correct. Because data is accurate, right? So I face those challenges in terms of, I won't say pushbacks, because when I think I'll say initial pushback, when you say, well, this is a possibility, because it's complicated, it's complex, in the minds of people, they tell you no. But once I show the possibility, once I build something and they see it, and they see how much more it makes their life easier, everybody becomes, more receptive to it, and they're like, oh yes, this can actually work. So yeah, just maybe in summary again, first challenge for me is personally finding how technology can be an enabler. And then the second challenge is actually getting the buy-in from the people I'm working with to actually believe that technology can enable our processes. They don't know my processes, so I can explain to them, this is exactly what I want to do, but this is what I think you can do with it. And then they can tell me, oh yeah, this is a possibility. I can do this, I can do that. So I don't know all those DAX formulas. If you ask me now, I might not be able to tell you, but I know what Power BI can do. And I'll just say here as well, I didn't just stay with my HR certifications. I got a Six Sigma certification, I got a CSPO certification, as an Agile Process Owner. But the knowledge has helped me to be a better HR person. I remember when I wanted to become a business analyst, and I was thinking that a career switch was what I needed. And the knowledge I got because I actually did a CBAP boot camp, and I will say that it wasn't wasted knowledge. I still apply it, whether consciously or unconsciously.